Okay, Houston, we've had a problem here.
This is Houston. Say again, please.
Houston, we've had a problem.
Have you ever gotten lost in a class? Maybe the teacher's up there kind of yakking, and they were on to topic 3, and you were like, wait, I don't understand topic 1. I'm lost. And then you take the test, and you go, oh man, you didn't do so hot. And then the class moves on to the next topic. Well, guess what? In this classroom, that's not going to happen. You see, this classroom is going to be taught using a method called mastery learning. And before I go on, what I want you to do, you're watching this video in a tool called Perusal. And if you look up in the upper right-hand corner, you're going to see a button that says comment. And as you watch videos this year in this course, I want you to make comments, typically like a minimum of 4 comments. And you're going to see your peers' comments, so you can make comments on their comments. Also, if you ask a question, it'll like show that there's a question by just literally typing a question mark. So I want to encourage you to do that. In fact, part of your grades will be associated with how well you comment. And the tool's super cool. It's actually going to grade your comments using artificial intelligence. It's really a cool tool. And interact with each other. It's a time for you to watch these cool science videos and interact with each other. So the point of this particular video is to teach you about mastery learning. But let me add one other thing before it. Mastery learning, well, we're going to have a flipped class component to it. So it's a flipped mastery classroom. And let me talk just briefly about the flipped thing. So in most classrooms, this is kind of an interesting picture. It's developed by a guy named Benjamin Bloom. And what he's got here is he's got levels of thinking or cognition. You've got remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, creating. And it's typically pictured like this pyramid. And if you think of a regular class, and by the way, this is how I used to teach, is I spent most of my time teaching my students, standing up and lecturing, right? The remembering, understanding, and then guess what? The hard stuff, apply, analyze. That's the harder things to do, right? They had to do that at home. And the idea of a flipped classroom actually is to take this and flip it upside down. You still need to have remembering and understanding, but you spend less class time here and more class time on the hard stuff, because you're in a hard class, a hard science class. In a hard science class, you don't want to be going home to get help where there's no one there to help. You want to do the hard stuff in class. And in a mastery learning, you're going to be doing some things more on your own individually. So here's kind of a big pro tip. Make sure you do the pre-work, which tends to be a flipped video or a flipped reading assignment, and do that outside of class so that you can use class time. And then when you're stuck, you can get help, from me. Now that's a flipped class, right? But let's talk about mastery. So when you talk about mastery learning, it turns out there's sort of a cycle. It starts with clear objectives, which we're going to call those missions. And then it goes to what I'm going to call this, the individual space. Let me define this. Let me just jot this chart down first. So it starts with a clear learning objectives. So we're going to call these missions, and I'll show you a sheet of what the objectives are. So there's a specific thing you have to learn. You have to learn X, right? And then you're going to do what is called the individual space stuff. That's the stuff you're going to do alone. That tends to be the pre-work, like the flip videos and things like that. Then you're going to do activities in class. Again, it actually doesn't matter technically where you do these, but the group space tend to be things like experiments, worksheets, assignments that you're going to do. This is kind of the learning piece. That's what you're going to do in the learning. And then you get a mini test of some kind, a mastery check. It can take various forms. You'll discover sometimes it's a short little paper thing. Sometimes it's just having a conversation with me. There's a lot of ways that we're going to be doing mastery checks. And then if you don't succeed, here's the idea of mastery, right? The big idea of mastery is that if you don't learn it, you have to go back and learn it. So if you need to do remediation, I'm going to send you back into this loop, and you're going to do a mastery check again. Probably you're going to have to go look at one of these or some of these either again, but most often it's going to be a little bit different. And then there's also a piece here where you're going to reflect, where you're going to say, this is what I've learned and this is where I'm headed. And then you start to, lesson 2, which we call mission 2. So you got mission 1, mission 2, mission 3, you get the idea. And that's the idea of mastery learning. And the big idea, so there's missions. So let's say this is mission 1, right? And you might have 7 missions in a level. We're kind of gamifying the terminology. So a mission's like a lesson, and a level's like a unit. And when you're done with a level, you're then going to take what we call a boss battle, which is a major test. And the boss battle, again, it is a mastery classroom. So you have to score well on this to pass. I'll explain that a little bit later. And if you don't score well, you get to take it again. In fact, you can take it 3 times. And there's even caveats to that, because there's also even like practice tests that are kind of the same test. The big idea, folks, is that here's the big idea. You know what? I don't care when you learn something. I care that you learn. I feel like in education, I know, in education, we have said that those who learn fast are the smart kids, and those who learn slow are not the smart kids. Is that true? I don't think that assumption is correct. I think sometimes just because you learn something slower doesn't mean you're not smarter, that you're not better at a particular topic. So the speed at which you learn something, I honestly think it's more important that you learn the depth of what you learn. So this is mastery learning in a nutshell. Let's get more practical. What we've got right here is what's called the mission tracker. You may have seen this as essentially kind of a rubric. And you'll notice that there are 3 different levels of getting it, right? We're going to call this basic understanding, clear understanding, and deeper understanding, or I sort of get it, and I really get it. And what you'll notice in each mission, a mission is a row, in each mission you can achieve one of 3 different levels of mastery. You can achieve the highest level of mastery, deep understanding, the regular level of mastery, and then, if you will, the basic level of mastery. And when you look at these, there's going to be different things you have to do or things you have to demonstrate. I mean, ultimately, you're going to say, Mr. Bergmann, I'm ready to be checked off for mission 1.4 or something like that. And then if you've done these things that are listed in the mission tracker and done them to my satisfaction, then you will get credit. In fact, the way it's going to be graded is this grade, if you get the basic understanding, you get 8 out of 10. If you get a clear understanding, you get 9 out of 10. And if you get deep understanding, you get 10 out of 10. And again, there'll be like 7 of these in every unit. These are, if you will, minor grades in the scope of things. So that's the mission tracker. That's how we're going to do that. That's how it's going to be graded too. It's probably something that you kind of figure out. There's like essentially 2 grading systems, or grading categories, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Number 1, there is minor grades, which is going to be the missions, and then there's the major grades, which are the boss battles. Now, speaking of the boss battles, there's going to be 3 levels. So let's get and talk this. We've got the basic. Basic, clear, and deep understanding. Essentially what I'm going to do is, I have created 3 different tests. All right, so there's called the basic test, or boss battle, or that's our term, it's the boss battle. So the boss battle, if you A, boss battle B, and boss battle C. Actually, you know what? I'm just thinking this. I'm going to call this boss battle C, B, and A. You'll see why. Is that there's going to be 3 different boss battles. It's like choose your own adventure. Which one do you want to take? Your call, right? And here's the deal. It's a mastery system, so you actually have to do well on the boss battle. You have to score greater than 80% on either the basic, the clear, or the deep understanding. And if you score more than 80% on the basic one, you will get a 75%. That might seem weird. Wait, you're taking off percentage? Yeah, I am. If you pass more than 80% on the clear understanding, right, I get it, right, then you get an 85%. Oh, that's kind of nice, right? 80 and you get an 85%. And then if you do this, you get a 95%. You might ask me, Mr. Bergmann, how do I get more points? How could I get 100, right? Could you ever get 100 on test? Of course you could. Because if you get an 80%, let's say you just get exactly 80% on the hard test, the boss battle A, then what you're going to get, here's the deal, is for every 4% you go above this grade, you get 1 more point. So if you score, let's say, 88%, that's 4 times 2, that's the 8, right? That's 8 points more, then you would get a 97 on the test. So the highest you could get, of course, is 100, here at 90, here and 80. So at the beginning, or probably at the end of every level, like a unit, you're going to take a test, and you have to score this. All right, you have to score an 80% on whichever test you want. By the way, that if you think that actually translates, right? You can only take the test 3 times. You say, well, wait a second, can I try this one first and then kind of graduate? Of course you can. You might realize that ultimately you get 9 options, right? 9 choices. You can take 3 of these, and 3 of these. There's only 3 attempts on each, and then you have to move on, and you get what you get. But you have to keep taking it until you get an 80% up until your 3rd attempt. And by the way, when you go, let's say you don't do well on that first attempt or whatever, it's important to take some time and be very proactive and say, Mr. Bergmann, I'm struggling, and I think I'm struggling with this. And I will kind of hound you. I will come around and I'll say, dude, man, you got a 62. Let's talk about what's wrong. How can I help you get better? Or I might say, man, you ought to be taking you should take the deep understanding, the I really get it category. So that's essentially how the class is going to work. Really got major grades, minor grades. Major grades is the boss battles, and then it's the same pattern in the minor grades, and these are just like 10-point assignments, and you have to do the things and prove that you've done mastery. Now, a couple things about what I believe about education. And I've had a weird life where I've had a chance to travel the world literally and see different things in the world of education and visit schools all over the world and written some books, as you'll see in another video where I talk about myself, is as I've looked at the world of education, right, all of education, there's what they call educational research. Research like people who study education and what makes good teaching good. And my summary of this, and I've shared this with thousands of people, my summary is that what makes good teaching good is 2 things. Number 1 is active learning. Active learning is not passive. It's the opposite. You've all sat in a class where you had to sort of sit and get right? You've been there in that class, right? Anyone? Right? You've been in that class, and that's the opposite of what we want to be. You need to be involved actively in your learning. That's where you're going to take control of your own learning. But the other piece, if you look at the education, this is, by the way, supported by research, but the second thing is this word. Relationship. My guess is you don't really care what I know until you know that I care about you. And as a Christ follower, I think this just mirrors the gospel. If you look at the gospel, it is God's story of redeeming His people and bringing them back into relationship after a fall. It's an amazing story. Of course, it's the great meta story of the universe. But what I want to say here is I want to get to know you. I want to get to know how you think about science, but I also want to get to know you as a person. And I hope that maybe are you into cars, or maybe you're a dancer, or you love sports, or your biggest thing in life is anime, or whatever it is that's your thing. I want to get to know that about you. And to that end, one of the things I want you to do is to create a video to introduce yourself to me. As you'll see, I've got a video introducing myself. So I want us to go both ways. So hopefully you've made some comments by clicking on the comment button up there and made some comments and interacted with each other. I want to make this, again, active. I want even the video watching to be active. The way to make that active is to interact with your peers. And me, I'll be also interacting with you in that space. Yeah, I'm excited to have you guys in class. Mastery learning just works. Last year all my students were successful, and I know you will too. We'll see you in class. Because Houston, we don't have a problem.